Okay, Steve.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. Before you got involved with Scientology, if someone asked you how old you were, what would you have told them?
I would have said 28,
Okay.
29. Right?
After you got involved with Scientology and you learned the truth, how old would you have told someone you were if you...
76 trillion years.
Okay.
Now, I should point out that that's 76 trillion Earth years.
Uh-huh.
But there's different kinds of time. There's linear time, there's chronological time, there's three-dimensional time. On some of my auditing folders, they go back to quadrillions and quintillions of years, because there's a formula to convert that to Earth years. I just wanted to let you know so that there wouldn't be any problem with that.
Okay. Just as a way of our getting started, can you tell me some of the things that you've discovered about your history, both in this life and in your past lives, that came up in the course of your learning about yourself through Scientology?
Well, the first thing I discovered is that I was not a body, that I was a spiritual being, or a thetan, operating a body. And once I had solid reality on that, I found out more about who I am, what I am, where I've been all this time, why I'm here. Much of the data that I know is in this library. There's a tape called The Roll of Earth, which talks about this planet as a prison planet, and that we are here because it's a dumping ground. We're the undesirables, and this is a place where no one else of any knowingness really wants to be, because it's really a place for undesirables, for nonconformists, for the artistic, for criminals, for deviants, you know, different things like that.
How was it that you came to learn about these things? What was the mechanism through which it happened?
Well, through auditing, through training, through data, listening to tapes, reading books, proving a lot of it out on the meter, having it proved out on the meter, having verified some things that I thought could really be. I mean, I never knew why I didn't like certain things in the physical universe. Certain images annoyed me. And
like what, for example?
Well, first I'll give you the earliest example. When I was 6 months old, I refused to drink milk. And of course, in those days, the milk was in glass bottles. They weren't in plastic bottles. And when I was 6 months old, I would take the bottle and smash it against the wall every time my mother would give me a bottle of milk. But yet I would drink apple juice, orange juice. I love orange juice to this day. But milk, smashed against the wall. And my mother eventually gave up. She went into apathy over it. She just didn't give me milk anymore because she didn't want to clean up the glass. But I often wondered how a 6-month-old child who couldn't even speak yet would know to that extent why milk was so bad. And I found out in Scientology that I had been poisoned by a wife who gave me milk to drink, and it was poisoned milk. And that incident carried forward into this lifetime, and naturally I didn't want any part of it.
When were you poisoned?
I was poisoned, actually, you have to understand a little bit about time. And in order to answer the question,
yeah, tell us about time.
Chronologically, it was in time my last life, but it was actually 8 lifetimes ago. Because when you die and you drop your body, you do a shift in space to the between lives area, and you go through a series of very suppressive implants, which I can describe to you in great detail if you want me to. But I want to get to the point of what I'm saying. You know, then I can go back to this. It would be non sequitur if I did it the other way. Anyway, when you come back to the physical universe, you don't only do a shift in space, but you do a shift in time, and there is no guarantee that if you dropped your body in 1988, you would come back in 1989. You could just as easily come back in the year 1200 or the year 3000. Actually, there is a chronological time stream or range where the Between Lives area is set up where for 3,048 years in either direction, you could actually come back earlier or later. Or you could come back in simultaneous time where you could physically be operating two bodies at once without knowing it. Let's say you died in 1988. You could come back to life in 1962. And you could, for the period from 62 to 88, you're physically operating two bodies as a thetan, but in your own time track, one is really before the other in sequence. But in the chronological time track, which has nothing to do with real time, you're physically operating two bodies. For example, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, simultaneously someone else invented it in Europe. And when Bessemer invented the steel process, a guy named, I forget the name, but there was someone else who invented steel at the same time. I have it, it's in one of my books.
Book by whom?
By L. Ron Hubbard. And what actually was, these were the same person.
What
They were the same person?
But operating two different bodies.
What book is it of Hubbard's that discusses this?
It's actually a tape. It's a tape called The History of Man, which I have. I know exactly where to find it on the cassettes. It's the third tape in the series called The History of Man. I know my library.
Okay, what are some of the
was
other...
wasn't I saying something before we did this? Oh yeah. So you could actually conceivably come back in a different time zone. So when I say it was my last lifetime when I got poisoned with the milk, chronologically it would have been because it happened in the 40s after World War II. I had been in the concentration camp. My name was Mordecai Kusvitz, and I lost 4 children. I lost my wife, and then I got married. I went after the war. I was the only one in the family that survived. I had a lumber mill in that lifetime in Poland, in Katowice, Poland. And I survived the war, and I went to Tahiti. And I met a girl there named Gabrielle Johannes on the island of Moorea. And she was much younger than me. I was like 53 at the time, and she was like in her early 30s. And she was unfaithful, and she poisoned me with milk. Now, you know, it's a funny thing. 3 years ago, part of my training in Scientology was to go back to that island and find this lady, who is now an old lady.
You found her?
And I found her.
You found, what's her name?
I found Gabrielle Johannes. She was living in Papeete. And I found her, and I confronted her with this, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but were you ever married to a Mordecai Kusvitz? And she was like taken aback, you know. And I finally, after explaining what had happened, and I had been in Scientology, and this is what had been transpiring, she hugged me, I forgave her, and everything was fine. And now, I did a partial release on the lock of milk. Lock means, well, you know what that means.
Well, tell us.
Okay, well, when you have a lock, it's a chain of incidents. It's not like an engram because you're not feeling pain and unconsciousness, but just the very thought of milk turning me off. Like if I couldn't watch a television commercial for milk because I would get physically sick. I would experience somatics. But now I can watch that commercial. I still won't drink the stuff, but I actually de-intensified the effect of the milk by actually confronting the incident.
Exactly how did you do that in that particular case?
In that particular case, by actually going back and confronting the death, confronting the place where it happened, and then confronting the murderer, the lady who did it, and forgiving her, and telling her, I'm still okay, and you're okay, and we're friends. It de-intensified the anxiety, shall we? I can use your language once in a while too, of the incident, and it reduced the charge. It reduced the charge of the incident, and you know, it was a great thing to do. It was part of my handling in Whole Track was to go back and actually locate this incident, locate the person, de-intensify the charge on the incident, and that was a major breakthrough I had in knowing with total causation that I really lived before.
But there weren't a lot of things that had happened on the whole track you couldn't go back and actually confront in this
Of course
body.
not, but that you do it on a gradient scale.
Okay.
You do it on a gradient scale with current lifetime so that you could then not have to Q&A with the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Now, but how would you de-intensify on things that had happened in past lives where you couldn't do it in this body?
You exteriorize.
What do you mean by that?
Look at this lawyer I got. You have to leave your body. You have to be outside of the body so that you can travel through matter, energy, space, and time, location, form, and event without the constraints, shall I say, of the physical body. Let me explain something to you about the physical body. You think you see through your eyes. You know something? Did you ever have a dream?
Yes.
Were your eyes open?
No.
Did you have pictures?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a dream.
It's a dream, but you're seeing things. You have visios. You have actual mental image pictures that you experience in your dreams. You don't need your eyes to see. If you could picture for a minute what it would be like I know, have reality, and when I'm outside of the body, I see 360 degrees around. I don't have to look with blinders. These two eyes are blinders. I don't have to look at you through two messed eyes. Messed is an abbreviation for matter, energy, space, and time, which we use in Scientology. You don't need these ears to hear. You just know that you can hear, and you hear.
How did you learn to go exterior?
Well, there's various processes that are.
Tell us about some of them.
Well, the easiest one is be 3 feet in back of your head, and know with stability that you're there. You also can hold all 8 corners of the room and don't think. That's another process. If you only see 4 corners, that means you're looking at them. But if you can hold them, physically hold them by putting out a beam, you see, and not just looking at them, but putting out a tractor beam or a pressor beam. You know, there's different kinds of flows. These are different flows that you can put out. And for example, for one situation which is very easy to do, go down to any cemetery and put out a flow to someone trapped in their dead body, and you can actually get them on their way to the between lives area. Some people are so bad on confronting that they think that they are still their dead body. You go to a morgue. You can go into a morgue and look at all of these slabs of people lying in these you know, in the morgue, and all you have to do is get into communication with one of them, and they'll think God's talking, or they'll think all kinds of weird things, you know.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I have.
When did you do it?
Oh, I did that back in '83. I went with Bonnie Mott. We went to a morgue, you know, and we actually went there under false pretenses to identify someone, because it's hard to get into a morgue telling them that you want to spring people out of their bodies. But we did this as a drill. And she and I put out a beam, and she saw this beam.
Were you exterior when you did this?
Yeah.
You mean you weren't in your body?
Well, I was in my body, but I was vacillating out back and forth. I put the beam out, and then I had to get exterior to locate the beam so that it would get to the right place, because I had problems doing this while in the body.
How did you go exterior on that occasion? Do you remember? What mechanism did you use?
Well, I just located myself in space and time. I didn't. It's.
Okay, what were you going to say? It's what?
I'm sorry. Go on.
You locate yourself in space and time. See, there's one thing I have to explain to you that may help you understand, Mark especially, because you know all this. You're in your body, I'm in my body. You have your energy flows, I have mine. And we're in this space, but you're in your space and I'm in my space. But the thing that keeps us imprisoned is time. We are both in consecutive moments of now. And that's the key to exteriorization. Time. You don't have to be in now. You can be in then, you can be in to be, You don't have to be stuck in nowness. That's why Earth and this physical universe is a prison planet.
Can you exteriorize while you're sitting there talking to us?
Yeah, I just find it very awkward to be able to. I just would find it very awkward at this point because I'm not comfortable, you know.
Well, maybe later then.
Maybe later. But my question is, when you exteriorize, what happens to your body?
It stays where it is. I can talk through the body, but I can perceive different. In other words, the walls get very soft, like they're not there. You know, a lot of times I'll be sitting in this chair, and all of a sudden I'll get really frightened because I don't see this wall. I see the whole length of the next apartment. You know, and I've never been in that apartment, never, but I know where everything is in there.
Do you?
Because I'll be sitting through right here, just probably I'd be reading a book. Of course, you know, I don't read anything else but LRH, and all of a sudden I'll just
LRH?
L. Ron Hubbard.
Okay.
And I'll sit here, and all of a sudden I really lose it because I don't see this wall. I mean, I see a whole series of rooms, you know, and everything around me, including what's under me, and that's another thing. When you can actually see through the floor, and you're looking down 11 floors, you get really shaky because you realize you're only in you're up in space, and there's nothing holding you up here.
You were one time telling me that you could drive your car when you were exterior.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times, well, that's an automaticity. An automaticity is very simple. You set the body on automatic. When I do a wedding, I'm very rarely around.
What do you mean you're not around?
I'm not around. The body does the wedding, says the words, goes through the vows, and sometimes I come back to the body in the middle of the ceremony and say, what the hell am I, where am I? What did I say last?
Who got paid? You or the exteriorizing person?
The body got paid. The body deserved it. It worked. I didn't do a damn thing. But sometimes I'll be like in the middle of a ceremony, and all of a sudden I'll come back to the body because I was in Australia or somewhere, and I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, like I have to catch myself and like backtrack and see where we were. You know, where the body was. You know, whenever I say where we were to Dr. Geertz, he says, "Oh, that's schizophrenia," but it isn't. It's actually the thetan and the body interacting. You know,
Dr. Geertz thinks you're schizophrenic.
That's unfortunately that's the kind of a doctor he is. But you know, in the average layman psychologist, I'm not putting you down, but I'm just saying the average WOG, you know, WOG psychologist, I should say, would come to that conclusion.
What is WOG?
WOG is a acronym for Worthy Oriental Gentleman. I should bring my dictionary here. You're going to ask me a lot of questions, and I don't want to give you tech which isn't standard.
Tech? What's tech?
Technology.
That's your belief system?
Yes.
Yeah, don't worry about talking Scientology. If you want to use the vocabulary.
Yeah, but he's confused. You see, I'm giving him all kinds of MUs, and I'm going to.
Well, tell you what.
MUs?
Misunderstood words.
Okay.
And he'll soon be doping off. You know.
Well, but sometimes just run for a while when Mark can't stand it anymore. He'll ask you for a definition. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah, ask me for a definition.
What does WOG? What does WOG mean?
A WOG is a pejorative term for like a non-Scientologist scum. You know.
Well, isn't
it means worthy Oriental gentleman, but it also means the world operating genetically. That's the real definition.
Who is a WOG then?
Anyone who is not a Scientologist, anyone who is not aware of the fact that they're a spiritual being, operating a body rather than being a body.
So then, am I a WOG?
Well, I hope you're one of the better ones.
Okay.
well, presumably all WOGs, presumably all suppressives are WOGs. Is that right?
In order to be a no. Well, once you're a suppressive, you've been declared a non-Scientologist.
By whom?
But that's an interesting point. I never really looked at that before. That's like one of these syllogisms, you know, that you get when you study logic. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to look out for things like that in method, in word clearing, you know. When people do those generalities, that's a typical psych reaction, by the way.
Okay.
To give me a glittering generality like that.
Who would be a suppressive?
Well, if you hand me my Introduction to Scientology Ethics, I can read it to you, but I can tell it to you without
just tell it to us.
A suppressive is basically anyone who does not follow the 10 points of KSW, of keeping Scientology working. But more than that, not only not following it, but actually suppresses the church of Scientology, suppresses a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge. It's anyone who commits a high crime or an act of suppression which results in real negative statistics for an org or for any of the dynamics, actually.
How vital is a Scientologist's right to go up the bridge?
Well, there's two rights that have been interfered with in the physical universe. And those two rights are the right to one's sanity and the right to leave the game. Did you know that? Have you heard that before?
Not the second one, no.
Okay. The right to leave the game. If a person does not want to be here, and if a person wants to go to... I hate when that happens.
Why don't we... Okay, let's go back to the question I think we were talking about before the phone call. I was asking you to explain the importance to a Scientologist of going up the bridge.
Well, the bridge represents the levels of awareness, knowing how to know. And at the top of the grade chart, you enter a phase where you are not dependent upon the physical body for any reason whatsoever. You operate by postulates. You say, let there be light, and there is light. In other words, that's a postulate. And you don't need any of the barriers of the physical universe in which to operate.
Now, is it you, or do you mean, when you say you in that explanation, you the thetan or you the body?
No, we're talking the thetan.
Okay.
The body is the genetic entity.
So the you in this...
There is no body you. You are not a body.
I understand.
That's the whole point I'm trying to make.
I understand. So that it's the thetan that gains these abilities through the processing.
Yeah, the genetic entity is no different than a genetic horse or a cat or a dog.
Are these new abilities that the thetan acquires, or are these old abilities that the thetan always had?
These are exactly. They're old abilities that the thetan learns how to reacquaint himself or herself with.
You mean I have these abilities?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
only a matter...
It's a matter of the fact that they're occluded. Your abilities are hidden. They're occluded because of all of the overts that you've committed along the line.
How did it happen that the thetan lost the abilities?
Because the thetan became the victim of his own trap. He built this trap called the physical universe because he wanted to create randomity. And he wanted to create, in other words, a big game where, picture yourself knowing everything there is to know and knowing how to know it. And there is an element of 2.5, which would be boredom on the tone scale. There would be an element of, well, we know all there is to know, so what else is there? So we created the element of being slightly unknowing in order to enjoy re-knowing. Do you understand what I'm saying? The purpose of setting up the physical universe the way we did was to create a game. But unfortunately, we created the game. It's like, there's a very good analogy. When they built the atomic bomb in the 40s, they didn't build the cure for the atomic bomb. They just built the bomb. And the same analogy, the way I learned it in training, is we built the body and the physical universe without the way to unbuild it or uncreate it. And that's what Scientology does. Scientology is the method of uncreating the physical universe, uncreating the mess that we're in. And it can be done in a variety of ways. One of them is uncreating time itself, because very few people realize that there's such an illogical thing happening here. We have three-dimensional space, and we only have two-dimensional time. That is totally absurd and ludicrous, because when you think about it, why should time be moving in one direction with consecutive moments of now? Why shouldn't time be moving in any direction you cause it to move?
If a Thetan regains its lost powers, what's it capable of doing?
It's capable of knowing, being, doing, and having whatever it wants.
Does it have power over matter, energy, space, and time?
That's one of the byproducts of regaining this ability.
So it could postulate whole universes.
Exactly. You can build your own universe. The PDCs teach you, the Philadelphia Doctorate course lectures teach you how to build a universe.
What do you mean by build a universe?
How to create your own universe. Forget about this one. You could postulate a universe and build it better. For example, in the PDCs, Ron talks about God's mistakes in creating the physical universe, if he in fact created it, which we know that he didn't. He created us, allegedly. That's the eighth dynamic theory. And of course, it's also in my book of life, too. God created us as theta. In the book, I say as pure thought. And we built the universe, because after all, if God is infinitely good and truth and love, why would he create a universe whereby every time we had to eat, some plant or animal would have to die?
How important is it to you personally to regain your Thetan powers?
It's the most important thing in my life. I would do anything it takes to do it. Anything. At this point, in fact, I found out that Cult Awareness Network has some hidden Scientology data. Are you aware of that?
No.
Well, I found out. I made some calls, and now I'm trying to. Of course, I'm operating as a squirrel, you know, obviously, because I can't do it standardly. But I have to get this data no matter what it takes to get it.
What do you mean as a squirrel?
Well, a squirrel. Oh, I didn't bring my tech dictionary back down here. It's up there.
You know,
the
definition.
A squirrel is a person who perverts Scientology, who alters the tech, and who tries to delve into offbeat practices which are not approved uplines by Scientology as what is standard.
Why are you a squirrel?
I'm a squirrel now because I can't go up the bridge, and I need to get the data. How can I go up the bridge now when I'm declared a potential trouble source?